right, let's dive into this. Joy versus happiness. Everyone wants to be happy, right? But then there's this whole idea of joy. We've got your notes and articles, research papers, and even some brain scans. I'm not sure what we'll do with those, but hey, let's see what we can unpack
Well,
here.
and the thing is, it's not just semantics. It's not like we're just, taking a dictionary and saying, here's happiness, here's joy.
Yeah.
It's really about looking at what makes a fulfilling life. And your sources, they suggest it's more nuanced than just, feeling good all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Like, is one better? Is there a, like a hierarchy of good feelings? And the research, it kind of hints that it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Right, you've got that story about Walt Disney trying to pitch his vision. A mouse, fairy, dwarves. I mean, come on.
To a bunch of bankers, no less.
Yeah, exactly. These serious bankers, and they thought he was completely nuts. But Disney had this unwavering belief, this
dream.
With the joy, this contagious joy that ultimately built an empire.
Yeah, that's classic Disney, right? But what does that story tell us about joy versus happiness, especially for the average person, right? Someone who's not building theme parks.
Well, it shows us there's a distinction. Happiness, a lot of times, it comes from external stuff, achievements, possessions, or even just that feeling of, I made it. But joy, it's internal. It's like Disney, facing all that rejection, but still driven by a vision, something bigger than himself. That's joy in action.
Okay, so it's less about the outcome and more about the drive. Is that why, you see these high achievers like those CEOs back in the 1920s? I mean, they were richer than some countries, but a lot of them ended up pretty miserable, right?
There's research, actually. The Center for Creative Leadership, they found that the most effective leaders, they prioritize caring for their people. It's not just about hitting those targets. It's more about creating an environment, where everyone feels valued, where they feel like they're a part of something meaningful. That creates joy, not just happiness from just succeeding.
Got it. Okay, so there's like this leadership aspect to joy. It's not just personal. It affects how we connect with others. You've also got Teddy Roosevelt in your notes, known for being, a bit of a rough writer, but also for really understanding people.
Well, he did his homework, Roosevelt, he actually researched his guests' interests before they even set foot in the White House. He knew that to truly connect, you had to go beyond small talk. William James said the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated.
That makes sense. And it's not, it's not about manipulation. It's more about genuine interest in the other person. Like I was reading that even companies are now prioritizing values and beliefs when they're hiring, not just skills.
Yeah, it's a shift. It's going from what can you do for us to who are you and how do you fit into our purpose? That's what builds a culture of joy, a shared joy, not just happiness based on, how well you perform.
But what about when things go wrong? I mean, because your research also talks about failure, about setbacks, even uses the term boldness regrets, which I've never even heard of. Doesn't sound very joyful.
Well, and here's the thing. Joy, it's not about the absence of hardship. It's about finding meaning and growth, even in those tough moments. Like, you've got Serena Williams. She said, I've grown most not from victories, but setbacks. That's resilience, and that's a key ingredient of joy.
Okay, so it's not about avoiding the negative. It's about reframing it. But how do you actually do that? Fail better. I mean, that sounds great on a motivational poster, but real life failure hurts.
Oh, it does. It does. And your notes touch on this. Loss aversion. We're wired to feel the pain of loss much more strongly than the pleasure of gain. That's why, those bag taxes are so effective.
Yeah.
Where you have to pay if you don't bring your own bag.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. So are we fighting our own biology when we try to find joy in failure? And why even bother?
Well, because those setbacks, that's where the real learning happens. It's like Thomas Edison, he said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That's growth mindset, a core principle of joy. You're not defined by the fall. It's about how you get back up.
It takes courage, though, right?
Yeah.
To see it that way. And honestly, I was looking at Google search trends. Success outweighs failure searches by a huge margin. It's like we're all collectively trying to ignore the messy parts of life.
Yeah, and that's where we trip up. Joy isn't about ignoring the hard stuff. It's about recognizing that even in those moments, there's an opportunity for growth, for deeper understanding. Like, think about Andrew Wilkinson. He built this company called Flow. Brilliant entrepreneur.
Wait, wasn't Flow supposed to be the next big thing? What happened there?
He poured his heart and soul into it. It was this amazing, this revolutionary to-do list tool. But then a competitor emerged, Asana. They had serious Silicon Valley backing.
Also like David and Goliath, but with to-do lists.
Yeah, something like that. And he kept fighting, adding features, even refused a buyout offer.
Sounds like classic founder syndrome, right? You get so attached to your creation you can't see the bigger picture.
It is. It's the endowment effect. We overvalue what we own, even when it's clearly time to move on. And eventually, he had to walk away. Painful decision, but it led him to new opportunities.
So there's a lesson there about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. But how do you apply that to, say, personal relationships, not just business decisions?
That's a great question, and that's something we'll definitely explore further in the next part of our deep dive. But the core principle remains the same. Joy often comes from accepting what is, learning from it, and making choices that align with our values, even when it's difficult.
So we've talked about how joy isn't about just, chasing those good vibes. It's more about navigating the rough patches and finding meaning in those tough moments. But how do you cultivate that kind of mindset? I mean, besides just, repeating fail better over and over again.
Yeah. Well, you've got some interesting research in your notes here about how happiness is like a sprint and joy is more like a marathon, which I think that's a great analogy because it highlights the long game. Happiness that often comes from those external rewards, quick hits of dopamine. But joy, that's about those inner qualities, resilience, gratitude, compassion, things you develop over time.
So it's more about like character building than chasing those feel-good moments.
Yeah.
But how do you even begin? It's like, yeah, I want to be more resilient, but where's the instruction manual?
Well, one powerful tool you already have is your own mind. Think about those 1920 CEOs. A lot of them ended up ruined despite all their wealth. Maybe they were telling themselves a story, a story of invincibility, of being above the rules.
And that story that led to their downfall. So it's about being mindful of the narratives we create, right?
Yeah.
Making sure those stories they're serving us, not sabotaging us. But how do you rewrite those stories, especially if they're rooted in like deep-seated beliefs or past experiences?
Well, it starts with awareness. What stories have you been carrying around? Maybe even unconsciously. Are they stories of limitation, of fear, self-doubt? Or are they stories of resilience, overcoming challenges? Once you identify those narratives, then you can start to challenge them, reframe them.
Yeah, I get that. But it also sounds like a lot of like introspection.
Yeah.
Maybe even therapy. Is there a more actionable approach, something you could start doing today?
One simple yet powerful practice is gratitude. When we focus on what we're thankful for, even when things are tough, it shifts our perspective. It's not about denying the negative, it's about actively seeking out the positive.
So like looking for the silver lining. But doesn't that sound a little forced? What if you're like genuinely going through a hard time?
Yeah.
Are you supposed to just, slap on a fake smile and pretend everything's okay?
Not faking it. It's more about training your brain to see things differently. There's research that shows gratitude actually rewires your neural pathways, leading to lasting changes in how you feel. Emmons and McCullough did this study back in 2003, and they found that people who practice gratitude regularly, they report higher levels of happiness, they have stronger relationships, and even their physical health improves.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So it's not just like woo-woo feel-good stuff. There's actual science behind it.
Yeah.
But how do you make gratitude a habit?
Yeah.
Not just a one-time thing.
Well, start small. Take a moment each morning to appreciate the simple things. A warm cup of coffee, the sunshine coming through your window, the birds singing. You could even write down 3 things you're grateful for each day. Share them with someone you love.
I like that. It's about making gratitude a part of your daily routine, not waiting for like a big event to make you feel thankful. And speaking of sharing, you mentioned compassion earlier as another key ingredient of joy.
Yeah.
What's the connection there?
Well, compassion, that's the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It's about extending kindness and empathy, even to people who are different from us or who we might disagree with. And it's a powerful antidote to all the negativity and polarization we see so much of these days.
It seems like compassion is becoming like this rare commodity.
Mm-hmm.
We're so quick to judge, to demonize anyone who has a different point of view. How do you even cultivate compassion in a world that's constantly bombarding us with outrage and division?
Well, it starts with recognizing that we all have biases. We all see the world through our own unique lens, shaped by our experiences or beliefs. And those biases, they can lead us to judge others unfairly. So we need to develop a greater awareness of our own biases, to challenge our assumptions and be more open to different perspectives.
So it's about stepping outside our echo chambers,
Yeah.
being willing to engage with people who challenge our views. But isn't that kind of risky? What if those conversations just lead to more conflict and frustration?
It's true that engaging with different perspectives, it can be uncomfortable. But it's also essential for growth. When we're only exposed to ideas that confirm what we already believe, we become stagnant, we stop learning, we stop questioning, and we become more entrenched in our own biases.
So it's about embracing that discomfort of cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that it's actually an opportunity to grow and
Yeah.
and to understand things more deeply. But how do you do that without losing your own sense of identity, your own values?
It's not about abandoning your values, it's about recognizing that other people's values are just as valid to them as yours are to you. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but it does mean you have to respect them.
So compassion is about finding that common ground, that shared humanity, even amidst our differences. But what about when those differences feel insurmountable? When we're dealing with people who hold views that we find harmful or offensive? Is compassion even possible in those situations?
Well, that's where things get really, really challenging. And it's important to acknowledge that compassion doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior or tolerating injustice. But it does mean recognizing that even people who hold views that we find abhorrent, they're still human beings. They have their own stories, their own struggles, their own reasons for believing what they believe. And sometimes understanding those stories can help us bridge the divide, even if it doesn't lead to agreement.
That's a powerful perspective.
Right.
It's about seeing the humanity in everyone,
Yeah.
even those we disagree with. But how do you cultivate compassion for yourself? I mean, we're often our own harshest critics, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we make mistakes or fall short of our own expectations.
Self-compassion is so crucial. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness
Hmm.
and understanding that you would offer a dear friend going through a similar experience. Remember what we talked about earlier, about how failure isn't the end, but an opportunity for growth. Well, self-compassion is what allows you to embrace that growth, to learn from your mistakes without beating yourself up.
It's like that saying, be kind to yourself. Everyone else is already taken, but how do you actually practice self-compassion? Is it just about positive self-talk, or is there more to it than that?
It involves mindfulness,
Yeah.
recognizing your thoughts and feelings without judgment. It's about acknowledging our common humanity, recognizing that everyone makes mistakes, everyone struggles. And it's about offering ourselves kindness and understanding, even when we feel like we don't deserve it.
That kind of ties back to what we were discussing earlier about finding meaning and purpose. It's like when you can be compassionate towards yourself and towards others, it opens you up to a deeper sense of connection and purpose.
That's a great observation. When we feel connected to something larger than ourselves, when we feel like our lives have purpose, we're more likely to experience joy, even when things are tough. And that purpose, it doesn't have to be something grand. It can be as simple as showing up for your loved ones, contributing to your community, or pursuing your passions.
So it's about aligning your actions with your values, about living a life that feels authentic and meaningful. But what if you're not even sure what your values are or what your purpose is? How do you even begin to figure that out?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, what if you don't even know where to start? How do you even figure out what your values are or what your purpose is? It's like having all the ingredients for a delicious meal, but no recipe, right?
It is. It's a common dilemma. So many people, they feel lost. They don't know what truly matters to them. It's like that feeling of boldness, regret.
Yeah.
We often regret the things we didn't do more than the things we did. Maybe the key is to approach this whole values and purpose thing with a little bit of boldness too.
Okay, so instead of getting stuck in overthinking it, just dive in and experiment. But what if you make the wrong choices? What if you end up on a path that doesn't actually lead to joy? There's no one right answer for everyone. But remember what we said earlier about those wrong turns. They can be valuable learning experiences. It's like Andrew Wilkinson in Flow. He put everything into it. But walking away, it led him to new things, maybe even more fulfilling ventures.
Right, right. It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Hmm?
But what about those times when joy just feels, I don't know, completely out of reach? Like when you're dealing with grief or loss or just those really, really dark moments in life.
Well, that's when we have to remember that joy, it's not the absence of pain. It's more about about finding meaning, finding connection, even in those tough times. Like think about those studies about givers versus takers. Givers, they often report higher levels of meaning in their lives, even when they're facing challenges. It's like embracing the full spectrum of human experience, the good and the bad. It somehow deepens their sense of purpose.
So it's not about denying the pain, but more about finding a way to kind of integrate it into a larger narrative of meaning. But how do you do that when grief just feels so all-consuming?
Well, you have this quote from Rumi in your notes. The wound is the place where the light enters you. It's such a beautiful image, right? Suggesting that even in our brokenness, there's this potential for healing, for growth.
It's a powerful thought, but it also, I don't know, it feels a little abstract when you're actually going through it.
Yeah.
Are there more concrete ways to navigate those dark times without losing sight of joy?
One way is to think differently about sadness. We often try to avoid it or suppress it, but research actually suggests that sadness can serve a purpose. It can help us remember things better, focus our attention, and even be more creative. Think about artists like Leonard Cohen or Beethoven. They channeled their pain into their art, and those works, they resonate so deeply with people.
So it's not that sadness equals joy. Yeah. It's more like allowing yourself to feel those difficult emotions without judgment. They can actually lead to a richer, more nuanced experience of life.
That's it. Because trying to suppress those feelings often just makes them stronger. But by acknowledging them, by processing those emotions, we create space for healing, for growth. And that could involve talking to someone, journaling, maybe doing something creative, or even just spending time in nature. It's about finding those healthy outlets to help us move through those emotions, not get stuck in them.
And maybe it's in those moments, when we're really vulnerable, when we allow ourselves to really be present with our pain, that we discover a deeper well of compassion, both for ourselves and for others.
You've hit on something really important, because when we go through hardship, we develop more empathy. We really understand how fragile life is, how important connection is, the power of kindness.
Like that whole concept of post-traumatic growth, right? The idea that even after experiencing something really traumatic, you can come out stronger, more resilient, with a deeper appreciation for life.
And the people who face their own darkness, they often become like beacons of light for others. They get it. They understand the depths of human suffering, and they can offer a unique perspective on healing, on hope.
This has been such an insightful conversation about joy. I mean, we've talked about the science, the stories, practical tips, and even the kind of unexpected relationship between joy and pain.
And as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. Joy is not a fixed state. It's an ongoing practice. It's about the choices we make every day, the stories we tell ourselves, and the way we choose to show up in the world, even when it's hard.
It's a good reminder that we have more control than we think. We can choose to cultivate joy, even when things are tough. We can choose to focus on gratitude, compassion, meaning. And by doing that, we not only enrich our own lives, but it also has this ripple effect. It touches the lives of everyone around us.
So go out there, be a force for joy, embrace the ups and downs, the messiness of it all, and know that even in the darkest of times, there's always a spark of light within you, waiting to be kindled. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into joy. We hope you found it insightful, maybe even inspiring.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring,
and keep choosing joy.